So, our lives are a reflection of our consciousness, whether it be our conscious consciousness or our unconscious consciousness. Our dreams come true to the level of our consciousness. So we must build our dreams in consciousness first. And then, when they are ripe in consciousness, they will be ripe for harvest and will manifest in our lives. My purpose today is to support you in taking the first 2 steps into mastermind or divine mind consciousness, and thereby opening yourselves to the field of infinite possibilities for yourself and for a vision of equality and justice for all. So in view of the social unrest that is more visible than ever in our country today, I am dedicating this message series to a vision of racial justice in our world and to a dismantling of white privilege. So the human condition is unconscious consciousness, and groups of people that we gather with unconsciously as a divine mind group. The spiritual solution is conscious consciousness and conscious divine mind groups or circles. So I want to talk to you about something called the Mastermind Principle, that we're calling it Unity Santa Fe, Divine Mind Principle. And the term comes from a book authored by Napoleon Hill titled Think and Grow Rich. And Napoleon Hill says, the Mastermind Principle consists of an alliance of 2 or more minds working in perfect harmony for the attainment of a common, definite objective. An alliance of 2 or more minds working in perfect harmony for the attainment of a common, definite objective. He says, no 2 minds ever come together without a third invisible force, which may be likened to a third mind. No 2 minds ever come together without a third invisible force, which may be likened to a third mind. And when a group of individual minds are coordinated and function in harmony, the increased energy created through that alliance becomes available to every individual in that group. I'll say that one again too. When a group of individual minds are coordinated and function in harmony, the increased energy created through that alliance becomes available to every individual in the group. Our elder brother and way shower Jesus said it this way, as recorded in Matthew 18, verses 18 through 20. Assuredly, I say to you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, I say to you that if 2 of you agree on earth concerning anything that they ask, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I am there in the midst of them. So let's look closely at those 3 statements. Assuredly, I say to you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. So to bind means to make certain or irrevocable. It's to obligate or unite. But I like that idea of to make certain. And earth is, in this context, human thinking. It is our mortal mind. It's human thought expression. So whatever is in our minds, our human minds, our mortal minds, is made certain, is made irrevocable and bound in heaven or in divine mind at the same time. So whatever we're thinking of our human self, our mortal mind, is made certain and bound in heaven or divine mind at the same time. Now, to loose means to untie, to release, to set free, to let go. So when we loose something in mind, in the third dimension, this earthly plane, this mortal mind, then the fourth dimension, divine mind or heaven, will release us from whatever that was. But we have to loose it first in mortal mind. The second phrase, again, I say to you that if two of you agree on earth concerning anything that they ask, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. So, when two or more agree in their thinking and feeling, and that's important, that feeling nature, because that's the marriage of the mystical marriage, when our thinking and feeling are united. When two or more of us agree and we come together in expectancy, joy, and harmony, then we establish contact with the mastermind. When two or more are gathered together in my name, which means in the divine nature, our divine nature, not just Jesus's divine nature, our I am or divine mind consciousness, where we agree, gather together and agree in our divine nature, then, I am or divine mind consciousness is there. And so let's hear these verses in context. Assuredly, I say to you, whatever you bind in human mind will be bound in divine mind, and whatever you loose or let go of in human mind will be let go of in divine mind. Again, I say to you that if two of you agree in human mind concerning anything they ask, it will be done for them by divine mind. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, in my nature, in my divinity, divine mind is in the midst of them. So whether or not we are conscious of it, we are always participating in mastermind or divine mind groups. So at Unity Santa Fe, the Board of Trustees is a mastermind group or a divine mind group. Each one of our ministry teams, when they get together, are a divine mind group. But how about those people you hang out with in your family and among your friends? They are your divine mind group. And you are partners in believing whatever it is that that group of you agree upon and give your attention to. I don't know about you, but I find that really scary, Makes me want to be more conscious who I'm hanging out with and what kinds of beliefs we are agreeing to. So we are a fourth dimensional being living in a third dimensional world. And in the third dimension is where all the problems are. The solution is in the fourth dimension. So let's spend more of our time in the fourth dimension. And this is why divine mind circles are so wonderful, because in a divine mind circle, we have an opportunity to open our heart and mind to inner guidance and personal transformation. We have an opportunity to pray with others and experience the power of group prayer. We have an opportunity to support, nourish, and inspire others to be all they can be, and to be supported, nourished, and inspired to be all we can be. So the ultimate goal is to become a master of our mind. And I love it. I was listening to one of Jack Boland's YouTubes a few days ago, and he said, sanity, this is about being a master of our own mind. Sanity is ordered thinking. Peace is ordered emotions. Health is order in the body. And prosperity is order in our finances. So, the first 2 steps of 12-step recovery programs are, this is in a nutshell, I can't, God can. That's the first 2 steps. And likewise, they are the first 2 steps into divine mind consciousness. And the way they're worded in divine mind consciousness steps are, I surrender and I believe. So the first step is, I surrender. I admit that I cannot manifest my highest good or successfully meet life's challenges with my intelligence and human efforts alone. I need help. I need the help of my divine nature. And the second step is, I believe. I believe that by listening to and following my divine nature's voice of peace, wisdom, and love within me, my divine nature significantly raises my consciousness and transforms my life for my highest good. So again, in a nutshell, the first 2 steps are, I can't, God can. I can't of my human self. I can of my divine self. So let's look more closely at that first step of surrender. I surrender. I admit that I cannot manifest my highest good or successfully meet life's challenges with my intelligence and human efforts alone. I need the help of my divine nature. It reminds me of the prayer of Jabez, where Bruce Wilkinson's friend said to him, you have to dare to dream so grand that failure is guaranteed unless God steps in. So we don't want to limit ourselves to what we can humanly accomplish, because we are indeed limiting ourselves if we do that. So we are surrendering our human powerlessness. We are admitting our human powerlessness. Now, surrender doesn't mean that I give up. It means I recognize, I admit that of my human self, I have limitations. That's all that surrender means. It means admitting it, acknowledging it. And if we put this first step into divine mind consciousness, into the context of the vision for our country, going beyond our individual selves, I would say it would read, I surrender. I admit that I cannot manifest racial justice and dismantle white privilege with my intelligence and human efforts alone. I need the help of my divine nature. The second step into divine mind consciousness is, I believe. I believe that by listening to and following my divine nature's voice of peace, wisdom, and love within me, my divine nature significantly raises my consciousness and transforms my life for my highest good. Now, this is about remembering that right in the midst of us, there is a powerful dimension, a powerful strength, an incredible enthusiasm right in the midst of us. It is a power greater than our individual humanity. And it is right in the midst of us, and it is right now doing for us what we cannot do for ourselves of our human self alone.
It's not good, your connection.
So it's also about believing. What we do in a mastermind circle is we believe for each other that nothing, no thing is impossible. It's easy to believe in things for our friends, but sometimes it's not so easy to believe in things for ourselves. But if 5 or 6 people are gathered in this circle, believing for me what I can't believe for myself, then it starts to make me believe it. I start to become convinced when I hear people pray back to me the truth that I want to see expressed in my individual life and certainly in our country. So when we create that feeling that, or the way we create a feeling of knowing is by getting in touch with how we would feel or how we will feel when the problem no longer exists, when the problem no longer has any power over us. So in a Unity Santa Fe Divine Mind Circle, which we're going to start creating on Wednesday, you have an opportunity to pray together weekly and be partners in believing for each other, for both individual personal intentions and for a vision for racial justice and dismantling of white privilege in our country. And you are encouraged to not just do it on Wednesdays, but to make these prayers a part of your daily spiritual practice. So the second step into divine mind consciousness in the context of the vision for our country is, I believe. I believe that by listening to and following my divine nature's voice of peace, wisdom, love, and justice within me, my divine nature significantly raises the consciousness of this country and transforms the lives of people of color for the greater good. So how do we do this? Well, over 100 years ago, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore began planting the seeds for the unity movement by meeting with like-minded individuals to pray for themselves and others. And so we can experience the uplifting power of group prayer and being a partner in believing for each other by joining a Divine Mind prayer circle during our Wednesday 6:30 p.m. community connection call in our Zoom cyber sanctuary, the same Zoom link you use for Sunday service. A practical thing we can do is to think twice before we speak. What a novel idea. Because our words and influence plant seeds of either success or failure in the mind of another. And we can also give racial justice and white privilege a deeper meaning for ourselves and thereby for our brothers and sisters of color. And we can do that by educating ourselves on racism and white privilege in particular. This past week, I began working on my 40 continuing education units that I have to get to renew my counseling license. And 2 of the courses I selected were on cultural education. So I'm putting my feet where my mouth is. So I open today's message by saying our lives are a reflection of our consciousness, whether it be our conscious consciousness or our unconscious consciousness. And I am ending this message by saying white privilege is a reflection of the consciousness of our country, whether it be our conscious consciousness or our unconscious consciousness. I celebrate our willingness to raise our consciousness by being conscious of racism and white privilege, and by being part of dismantling racism and white privilege, one person at a time, beginning with me. And let's begin doing that right now by being one together in a sacred time of shared prayer. So today's meditation is to honor George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, the people they love and who love them, and the countless other African American brothers and sisters who have been murdered as a result of the racism and white privilege in our country's consciousness. So in the words of Father Richard Rohr, in a preface to today's daily meditation from the Center for Action and Contemplation, during this time of social unrest, I invite you to sit with the powerful and uncomfortable emotions, such as anger or grief, that you may be carrying. Welcome them in the presence of God. And as Rohr often says, if we do not transform our pain, we will most assuredly transmit it. So I invite us to take a moment to just breathe into whatever that brings up for us. To just allow every breath to find its own rhythm and pace. To allow every breath to remind us of that one presence, that one power that is living us, breathing us, supporting, nourishing, and inspiring us, and every other sentient being in all creation. And I invite us to particularly hold in prayer consciousness and release into the heavens prayers of love and compassion and hope for all those who have had their lives taken because of racism and white privilege. And so I invite us to step up. And even though our nation has failed so many, or probably all of our African American brothers and sisters, although our nation may have failed them, we will not allow this failure to continue. And we begin taking action right now because we know we must build it in consciousness first before it will ever manifest in the world. We must build in consciousness that peace, that wisdom, that love, that underlie equality for everyone. We must build in consciousness first the dismantling of racism and white supremacy. And if this sounds impossible, just remember the Berlin Wall. It came down in consciousness before it ever came down in physicality. And so we build this in consciousness right now. We catch a vision of what it would be like and what we would feel like, and what we will feel like when racism and white privilege are dissolved into the nothingness from which they came. And we do this together in the silence, resting in divine substance that is who does the work. And as we gently bring our attention back to this time and place, silently say, thank you, Divine Mind, for an increased understanding of how we can join together to create a world that works for all, to create a country we can be proud of. Thank you, God, Divine Mind, that George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, and the countless others who've had their lives taken because of racism and white privilege did not lose their lives in vain, and that their deaths have been what has taken us to reach critical mass to truly raise consciousness, transform lives, and heal the planet. Thank you, thank you, thank you, that it is so, and so it is. Amen.